Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled HOA sued me for $100,000 over my bylaw violating pollinator garden. I destroyed them in court. I'm a simple woman who lives a quiet life with my husband, 2 cats and my favorite place on earth, my garden. I have lived in my home for 16 years. It's on a nice street with mature houses that are governed by a terrible HOA. An HOA that decided they would harass me for the last 2 years, sending me terrible letters and fines stating that it is contrary to the design scheme of the neighborhood, and that the wildlife it attracts is a nuisance to those around me. So many stupid things were said about such a peaceful and beautiful place, that is, until I decided to do something about it. My father passed away and he had always been an avid gardener, so in my state of grief and sadness I started building my own place of serenity, my garden. It's my therapy, it brings me happiness and peace, and watching all of the butterflies and hummingbirds is a joy to me. About 2 years ago, we began receiving letters from the HOA. Like I mentioned before, we have been here for 16 years and had no issues. Not a single letter. All of a sudden, my garden is a problem. First, it started with some cute signs I had up saying "Birds Welcome" and "Butterfly Garden" that my granddaughter made me. I also had a small statue, no bigger than 1.5 feet tall. It was an angel praying that was given to me at my father's funeral by a family friend. I felt like it looked after my garden and that Dad was with me. According to the HOA, it is some kind of unacceptable lawn decoration, and so were my signs. My yard is large and has tall, mature trees, as well as a large portion in the front that is a well-mulched area with different native wild flowers and other plants that are good for the nature around me. I added ferns, violets and other low-maintenance plants in my backyard that would help reduce the pollutants with the runoff from my neighbor's property. But I was instead forced to turn that back into turf grass last year after I caved and couldn't handle the letters and fines that were adding up. My husband was getting sick of it too and just wanted them to leave us alone. I continued to receive more and more letters, once stating that my pollinator garden went against their aesthetic vision of how the neighborhood and gardens should look like, going as far as to say that it is an eyesore that no one wants to look at. Multiple letters said that there was a neighbor that was complaining and saying that it was bringing wild animals onto his property like squirrels and chipmunks. He also said that my garden attracted mosquitoes, bees, butterflies and other pests to his yard. After all of this, it started to feel like bullying. My daughter works for an environmental engineering company and is a huge advocate of wildlife and environmentally friendly areas and habitats. With all of the negativity in the world today, I had such a hard time understanding why I was being harassed over a garden. Fast forward to 2 years later, and I am absolutely beyond sick of the issues with my HOA. My daughter had pushed me to finally do something about all of their harassment, so I started pursuing a lawyer. I don't even care about money really, I just want to be able to have my garden in peace. I don't want to sell the house, that is what several of my friends and family suggested. We have paid it off and have great memories there, and I love the area so much. I just wished the HOA would leave me alone. It takes me almost a week to find someone that would be willing to even accept a case like mine. I had several attorneys to tell me that I was trying to take on an unwinnable case. However, I trudge on, my head hanging after the 10 lawyers I have called and been laughed at. I almost gave up, but decided to give the last one on my list a shot. And it worked. 2 gentlemen, a father and son, named Kyle and Richard Take, decided that they would take on my case. We put together a lot of information, really it was like a presentation. I needed to have great reasons and explanations why my garden should be allowed, how it is environmentally important, nor is it actually hurting anyone. I basically needed to prove that their side was so unfounded and silly that I could pull it off. I saw why the other attorneys would not take on my case because it seems strange and like something that is impossible to support. that the HOA should have the final say in the appearance of my yard, and that is what I signed up for when I decided to join an HOA community. Kyle and Richard were so supportive of me, my husband and daughter. Richard apparently has a garden in his yard, one for vegetables, but it is a passion of his. He even asked if he could come by and see ours. When he did, he said he felt moved. The nature that was living in it was beautiful and a gift. There is not enough wildlife in the cities, nor are there enough flowers or other plant life and foliage for our bees and butterflies. It was a few weeks after starting that the ball was rolling before we actually had our day in court. I was prepared, I was ready. This could be a disaster, but it has to be done, I told myself. Once we got into the courtroom, I could hear the HOA board's lawyer telling some of them that this was a breeze and something they were going to sue us for their lawyer fees. They were not exactly trying to be quiet, and their arrogance was enough to make my husband fume. As a sweet and gentle man, he rarely gets that way, but he was so upset that day listening to them. As we were trying to tell our side of things, it felt like the opposing lawyer and the HOA board were almost mocking us. One woman was fake yawning as I was explaining why some of the wildflowers and weeds were beneficial for the environment. When we started to discuss the animals that were attracted, such as squirrels or chipmunks, their lawyer interjected, saying that they were wild animals that would not be there if it weren't for the garden. The judge did not appreciate the interruption and warned him though. That gave me some validation that the judge was not there to ignore me as well, and I became more hopeful and confident. When it came to their turn, well, let's just say their statements were bizarre. They even had my super weird neighbor that started all the complaints there to give his part, saying that I had giant man-sized butterflies and millions of mosquitoes terrorizing him and his property. I could not even get over it. Some of the stuff he was saying sounded preposterous, and the judge was quick to have him sit down. The lawyer laid into me, asking me questions that honestly were just a reach, almost as if his only tactic was to try and startle me into some kind of sad submission or belittle me and make it sound as if I have some weed-ridden yard that brings nothing but terrible creatures no one has ever wanted to see or deal with. Thankfully, the judge was on our side and felt like their harassment truly subject to money and that I was owed plenty. She quickly dismissed their request for me to pay their lawyer fees, which they said was almost 100k. Instead, she awarded me and my husband the same amount in harassment and for them to reimburse us for the money we had to give them in fines. It was a glorious day. We were all so happy. I am even in the process of trying to change the laws in our state regarding HOAs and their stipulations over our yards. Pollinator gardens should be allowed anywhere in any neighborhood, no matter what the stupid HOA has to say. After all, the Earth will be here for a long time after us, so their opinions of my butterflies and angels statue are at this point a thing of the past. And ripe stars, if you have watched until here, I would really appreciate it if you could also like the video, because it would be absolutely amazing if we could once again reach 1000 likes on the video. Thank you so much for your amazing support, it is very much appreciated. And the next one is titled, "My job is unnecessary? You will regret that statement." About 20 years ago, I worked in the technology field as a sales engineer supporting sales representatives. A new sales rep manager joined the field team and did not like the control sales engineers had over the sales process. Because I was the lead sales engineer, he decided to make me an example of his brilliance. He got a very large lead with a bank and proceeded to close a very large deal without involving any sales engineers at all. Just after the deal closed, he called to gloat, saying something to the effect of, "The biggest deal this month. Oh wait, you did not participate at all." About a month or so later, I get a call from that manager in a bit of a panic and I partake in a conference call with the customer. It is decided that I need to come to the company for a meeting. At the meeting, I figure out the sales manager and the sales rep totally effed things up and sold the customer an incompatible set of solutions. In the meeting, I casually mentioned that maybe the customer could return one bit of stuff and replace it with another, as they were roughly the same price. After the meeting, sales manager starts complaining to me for mentioning price, and price was the exclusive domain of the sales rep. He calls my manager, craps all over me. I did not like my manager at all, so when he took the sales rep aside, I said F you and quit. I sent a very lengthy defense of my actions during the meeting to HR. 4 months later, I get a call from another sales rep still at the company. He asks, "Hey, what happened at XYZ Bank? They are suing us." I call XYZ Bank and get the email for the CIO and send them a letter explaining that I was the sales engineer for the company you are suing. Call me. They eventually sent a lawyer to interview me and get my side of events. My testimony was devastating to my former company's defense. I showed the bank the letter I sent my HR in which I claim our company lied to the customer to get a sale. Eventually, I get a subpoena to be deposed in the bank versus company lawsuit by my former company's lawyers. By that time, I was working elsewhere and hanging out on Yahoo stock message boards and bashing the company's stock. One day, another sales rep from a distant territory that I still talk to called me to say that a huge deal we had worked on for over a year had just fallen through in dramatic fashion. I posted it to the Yahoo message board devoted to that stock. The stock crashed to $13 the next day. I wondered if my post had anything to do with it. About 6 weeks after the stock crash, it's the day before I am supposed to get deposed in the bank versus company matter, I get served with a lawsuit by the company. They had used the SLAP laws to get my identity from Yahoo and sue me for the post that crashed their stock. So I went to the deposition the next day and said, "I'm sorry, the company you represent today just served me with a lawsuit last night. This deposition is over." They were dumbfounded. Turns out there were 2 separate legal teams, one working on defending the company against the bank's suit and one finding that pesky internet troll that crashed their stock, and the 2 never noticed the same person was central to each. The company settled with the bank and dropped their suit against me soon thereafter. That long letter I sent to HR, turns out the managers above me did not read it. Once the lawsuit was over, the sales rep, the sales manager and his manager were all fired. The next one is titled, "Steal my tips and pay minimum wage? Bad idea." So this happened years ago when I was still in college. I worked for a delivery joint. The company seemed super cool because they provided vehicles instead of forcing you to beat down your own car. Huge perk, right? Well, in this case, no. The owner of the company used this as justification to take a percentage of the driver's tips. Often this would result in an employee making below minimum wage. If you made below minimum wage, you would have to come and pick up your check in person and sign a document attesting that you did make minimum wage due to undocumented cash tips, or some such nonsense. Now, this was a problem for 2 reasons. Number 1, in the state I was in, employee tips belong to the employee unless part of an employee tip pooling agreement. This was plain as day on the Department of Labor website. So that 20% gouge was already crossing a line. Number 2, you cannot just handwave and/or force employees to say that they made above minimum wage. So that's already pretty shady, right? Now, most people would see this situation and run for the hills, which probably explained the delivery driver turnover being so high. I, on the other hand, saw the potential. See, I'm pretty well versed in labor law and decided that I was gonna ride it out. I wanted to see how long they would keep this up. Here and there, I would make comments to the managers about the legality of their practices and was often told, "Our lawyer said it's okay, so it's okay." Would love to meet these lawyers one day, so I patiently waited for a year, documenting every red cent they took from me and encouraging the other drivers to do so too. Every new driver that came through that door got a little pow-pow with me and I would give them the skinny. Unfortunately, my plan must have leaked sooner than later. The joint decided to fire me after making up 3 bogus infractions. If you're interested in those, ask and I will explain in an edit. This was not a problem though, as my plan was already in action. See, in this state, unpaid wages collect interest, so what was $20 to $40 a night, 5 nights a week over 1 year, quickly became a decent sum. So I began collecting the names of current and previous employees whom had been screwed over by the company and collected their documented data and then sent it off to the Department of Labor. At the end of the day, it took a couple months, but the company was eventually required to pay a decent chunk of change to all parties and a pretty hefty fine on top. Overall, I believe it came out to a little under 100k. I was not done though. See, those shady little documents they had us sign claiming we made over minimum wage affected how the company was reporting its payroll tax. The IRS eventually came in and hit them for a ton of back taxes, and I received a small portion of the settlement. The IRS used to pay people who tipped them off. I don't know if they still do. Finally, I was increasingly aware of the company's under-the-table agreement with their health inspector, which I decided to go ahead and tip off to the health department. This resulted in even more fines and a temporary closure for the joint. Altogether, it ended up costing this dumb little delivery joint a ton of money just to stay open. All because they wanted 20% of their drivers' tips. The moral here is this: know your neighbor laws. It's degenerates like these who profit off the ignorance or fear of a workforce. The more you know about your rights, the less idiots like these will be able to survive in the wild. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. And the last one is titled All That for a Fridge. I work in an office where we have a small budget set aside for random purchases. It is basically like a petty cash account that we can use for expenses related to our projects and productivity. There are 5 of us who share that account. My team is also on the second floor, where there happens to be a full kitchen, fridge, oven, dishwasher, popcorn machine, 4 coffee makers, etc. right next door. I was given an assignment that involves using a creative mathematical technique. I could build a script for it and spend hours upon hours on it, and I could just get an add-on for the software I currently use and get it done in about 5 minutes. The add-on cost about $200. I was talking to one of my co-workers and told her that I was about to go ask the boss to buy me the software add-on with the petty cash account. No biggie, he would do it no problem. Then my coworker started telling me that she was upset people were stealing her coffee creamer from the kitchen, so she was going to ask the boss to buy her a mini fridge for her desk. That fridge also cost about $200. I did not think much of it and then left to go to lunch. When I came back, I went to my boss's office and asked him if I could use some of the petty cash funds. He said no, because they had just been exhausted and I would have to wait 2 weeks. I explained how I needed the add-on to do my job more efficiently, but he told me, "Sorry, we don't have any money until the 15th. I'm sure you can figure something out." My project was due before then, so I was going to have to make a script. Damn. It took me hours to build a script to do this because I've never done it before. I had to come in twice overnight as well. I am salary, so I don't get paid more for coming in extra hours. Sure enough, a few days later, while I was sweating over the script, in walks a delivery man with my coworker's new mini fridge. I learned through the grapevine that my coworker knew the petty cash funds were low, so purposefully tried to beat me to the punch. Okay, you wanna play this game. I started unplugging her fridge a few months ago, not every day, but occasionally. I will unplug it and let it sit for a few days, and then sneak back there and plug it back right in before she gets to the office. Every time I do this, everything in that fridge, including her precious creamer, goes bad. She has to clean out the fridge with disinfectant constantly, and sometimes her cubicle smells vaguely of sour milk. The fridge has been exchanged 4 times because it is broken. Every time she asked to exchange the fridge, my boss has to deal with it because he's the one in charge of the account that made the purchase. He is not happy about it. Yesterday, after the cheese and broccoli incident, they removed her mini fridge permanently from the office. The boss also sent out a memo this morning that says we are not allowed to make any appliance purchases with the petty cash funds from this point forward. And also included a reminder that a full kitchen is right next door. I wonder why he would say that. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.